Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kade. So the man that I will never walk down Fifth Avenue with because every store we see will end up having a documentary about it. Talk to me about Crazy About Tiffany's. How does this come about? I mean, obviously it's one of the most famous luxury brands. I was going to say in America, but in the world. How do you make a documentary about it?
So my impetus for doing it in the first place was because of location. I just had done the Scatter My Ashes at Bergdorf's film, which was the Bergdorf Goodman department store. And seeing Tiffany on the corner, catty corner to me for 2 years, I just thought, hey, iconic brand, Tiffany blue, it's so ubiquitous in our culture, but there's more than meets the eye to it when you do the research, such as, for example, the Yankee symbol, the Yankee insignia, the New York symbol that people take for granted, but it was a Tiffany designed logo, and it's probably the most famous sports logo in the world. So you suddenly realize, well, this has an audience because it's not just about women and diamonds, but it's a pop culture kind of roller coaster.
When you start digging into the research, I was able to screen the movie. Super fascinating stuff. All the various facts that come out blew my mind. Obviously, again, we think of the blue boxes, the expensive jewelry, but the history was mind blowing. When you start digging into it, what were some of the things that blew your mind?
So Charles Tiffany is the founder. I mean, this guy lived back, he was born in the early 1800s, and he is incorporating marketing principles that people use today that you wouldn't think someone would have the forethought to do. Owning
He's
a
the Donald
color.
Trump of jewelry.
Well, he's the Steve Jobs of jewelry. I mean, we mentioned Steve Jobs because he borrowed things from Tiffany, and he owned a color and trademarked it long ago. He created the engagement ring as we know today. He bought a Tiffany diamond that he knew would make him the king of diamonds in New York. So these things have maintained and continue to be celebrated at the brand now, but people are learning about this guy, I think through Steve Jobs a little bit, but it's not common knowledge that, the iPhone is a simple, elegant piece of technology, but he borrowed things from Louis Comfort Tiffany, the son, and Charles as far as their mass production of these beautiful objects.
One of the things you really explore is the building of the brand. And it's fascinating because obviously, again, we see the end product of how Tiffany has become this mega brand. But the building and the marketing of it was really fascinating. When you see the history of the building of the brand, what were some of the lessons? You'd mentioned obviously now people like Steve Jobs have used those lessons, but what were some of the lessons in terms of making it successful?
I think more than anything, they took advantage of moments that they thought could resonate in pop culture. So, Breakfast at Tiffany's, for instance, Walter Hoving, who was the chairman at the time, he embraced that novel or novella that Truman had written, and he knew that Audrey Hepburn was playing a prostitute in the film. But in cahoots with Paramount, they created this softer side of it all. They created this whole confection of, she comes to New York, she's this socialite or quote unquote kook who is a little odd and like, rough around the edges, but she has the elegant gown and she's having breakfast at Tiffany's. But when you read between the lines, she's a prostitute. She was up all night. She goes to Tiffany probably because she wants her life to be somewhat orderly and she feels safe there compared to what she's experiencing in life. So, you learn that Tiffany bought into the myth, made it their own. And I'm trying to pull it back a little and say, well, they took a risk because, this was meant this way, yet they created it this way. So society knows it in one instance, but to me, it should be kind of exposed for what it is.
Why do you think it's still so popular? I mean, the blue box, there's a million jewelry brands out there. What do you think makes the blue box what makes every girl go wild for?
I think it mostly is how it's been ingrained in us. Something about that color, obviously, people describe it as it's the psychology of it. It's very, it has luxury attached to it. And I think it's because of Tiffany, but it's also ingrained in us with, we show a Friends episode, we show Sweet Home Alabama, we show all these different instances. I think Bride Wars, there's a clip.
Yep.
And Jerry Weintraub also was incorporating Tiffany into Ocean's 11. And, you start to think all these people, they're not paid by the brand, but they're carrying it forward. And Tiffany is just, a beneficiary of it. So it's not like I was paid to do the film. So it was like, I'm also passing the baton and saying, hey, take a look at this a little closer to really react to why this color has resonated, why this, feels like luxury for you. I mean, the takeaway for me is the guy I was just talking to that had seen it said now his girlfriend wants a Tiffany ring. So I'm always interested now, is the audience going to want the ring from Tiffany? Are they going to love it?
Screwed generations of men.
Well, I don't know. Either women love it or they hate it. I don't know after the film. I mean, it's up to them, but maybe they see through it now. I'm not sure.
When you look at the myth versus the reality of Tiffany, what were the differences you uncovered?
It's a good question. I think the reality is that these things are more expensive because it's Tiffany and there's a white bow wrapped around it, where you can, and most people go down to 47th Street, which is the diamond district. It's the same diamond. Well, they say it's not Tiffany grade. And the Tiffany grade is, I think, a manufactured thing where it measures up to certain things in its quality. But you can get a Tiffany grade diamond from another dealer, and it's just as beautiful, and it means the same thing. Without the color blue, maybe it doesn't have the same romance, but the reality is it's the same stone if it has the same grade to it. So you're paying a premium. And either you buy into that or you don't. And I think we do a pretty fair take on how that image came to be and what you're paying for. Whether or not people react that way and want to go forward with that romance of it all, it's up to you. But
it's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of my favorite parts of the film, which is to essentially say it's kind of like the Apple effect. You said it perfectly. It's like if I put a phone in front of you that was the same phone, but one had an Apple insignia, you're going to automatically choose and probably pay more for the Apple phone. Tiffany's done the exact same thing. And what do you think it is psychologically about people? Why do they want to pay more for the brand, knowing that essentially they're the same products?
I think it comes down to basic, being an American and having, entrepreneurship thrive in this country. I think people respect when things are cleverly, ingeniously made, and they respect that that person built that empire to create that logo to then put it in your pocket. And there's a certain, I think, prestige to have being a part of that story, and I think people buy into it maybe on a subconscious level because they would love to do that someday. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously they're thinking it's probably more quality to that product because it has the logo, because they know more about it than the other product. But the hard truth of it is maybe it's not. Maybe it's, a puffed up thing that doesn't warrant people, reacting to it in a popular way. But Tiffany, to me, I think warrants the fascination. I think it is worth going there and buying into the whole notion of it. It will do well for women and men to do that, I think.
You've done Bergdorf, you've done Tiffany. What's the next store and brand you're focusing on?
The next one, we got Coca-Cola to allow us to tell their story.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
How cool is? Have you started digging into that?
Oh yeah, we've been in production for like a year, and we're going down all the roads. Yeah, like cocaine and everything.
Oh my god! So I'm completely addicted to Coke products. Like
Really?
it's a sickness. Is it true that there's an addictive product inside of Coke? Have you found that? Was there cocaine? Tell me everything.
I can't say that yet. I say the film will reveal all.
I'm about to shut off the camera, and I want to know everything right now.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. We went to a plant that was unmarked, that we know Coca-Cola gets their ingredients from, and we were shut down immediately when we got there, and the cameras were shut off, and it went all the way to the chairman, and there was a lot of complaining that went on about why were you there, that you're not supposed to be filming that. And those kind of secrets, that secret formula is real. It's like, we can only go so far, but now that we're officially authorized to tell the story, they're allowing us to give away some of the goods.
When you look at, oh my god, I'm like counting down the days till like minute 43. Your liver will explode at 60. So Bergdorf, Tiffany, Coca-Cola. When you look at big brands like this, what's kind of the common theme that you see between the three of them? What has made brands like that successful?
It's a very carefully cultivated image that starts with the font, usually, of the actual brand. The color.
That detailed.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they pay attention to those things, and they put a magnifying glass on all of that. And, because of the Tiffany film, the one provision they made to us as far as doing the authorized story of it, the Tiffany blue had to be Tiffany blue on the screen. It couldn't, have a shade off or like the slightest little imperfection. And the reason they do that is because, like Coke Red, it's a signature. And without that, you really don't have anything. I mean, that logo and the font, if you're creating a company, I would say for anyone, if they want that legacy, not just have a product that lives up to it, but make sure those things are locked down and they're yours and you own them. Trademarking, signature color, all that. Like, I think Pantone is the place to go if you want to buy a color. Like Jay-Z, I know, bought a color. Kanye, I think, bought a color. I mean, people who know are tapped into that, and they understand. I think Michael Jordan, owns a color. But it's interesting that way, that they have that mode of thinking to get that right first.
Note to self, buy a color. Dude, congratulations.
Thank you.
Super
Thank you.
fascinating. Like I said, I'd never really given thought, and I'm a former financial advisor in a past life.
Oh,
so
really?
I dealt with the behind the scenes of companies and the research, but I'd never given thought to a brand like Tiffany, how much it is gone into building that brand, how they maintained it, the secrecy of the brand, the protection of the brand, and it was really fascinating to see. And
Thank you.
I've always suspected that the jewels are the same, and obviously we're being upcharged but there's a secret to why they do that too. So it was really fascinating to see all of that, man. Congratulations.
So wait, as a financial advisor, you're on Wall Street.
I used to be. No, I actually was in Philadelphia. It's turned into an interview about me.
No, but Wall Street's a euphemism for the whole financial system. Right?
Correct, but I was in Philadelphia.
When you hear that people are saying it's rigged and the whole thing is built on fraud, how do you react to that?
Of course it is.
You think overall everything it's fraudulent?
I think that, I think there's a
Of course it is.
Of course everything's fraudulent in this world.
No, every industry has a touch of it, but is the whole thing rigged?
I think that there is a number of market makers who know how to manipulate the system. I think that the rich will always figure out a way to get richer. I think there is a very core model of capitalism and how the market works, but I think it's been so convoluted and so manipulated and so mutated at this point that yes, I believe like almost anything else, it's not a true basketball game. It's not talent.
So you think because when they come down on Wall Street, Wall Street doesn't give a voice back because they feel like they're right and they're like, well, we don't want to say anything.
Have you been watching Ballers on Showtime?
No.
Oh, not Ballers, Billions.
Yes, I watch Billions.
So Billions,
but that's just one hedge fund guy who you understand.
That's what's happening in the industry.
The entire industry.
No, but at the top of it, at the people controlling the markets, because it's based on Steve Cohen, who's a famous hedge fund guy, and that is a pretty fairly accurate idea of what goes on behind the scenes, which is information is gold, and who can get to the gold first. So. That's your next movie after Coca-Cola, but I honestly want to make. I want to give.
I want
a producer credit on that, by the way. I'm saying it now.
Okay.
All of a sudden, a lawsuit comes in, producer. So that's what. But no, it's a very rigged industry on many levels.
So anyone I ask, they'll say no, it's rigged. They're right.
That's a general statement, but there are riggings that go on inside the market, and information is key, and Billions in many ways does.
So is Warren Buffett dishonest? Is he rigging it just like everyone else?
I don't know the interpersonal of that, but look, I mean,
sorry.
No, it turned into an interview about Wall Street. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has teams of people that do what they need to do. Yes, and politicians and everybody else. Yes, it is a pay-for-play system, I think. So, congrats on this, though. By the way,
thank you.
Next documentary from Matt, Wall Street.